PR Connections Radio presents. This episode of the PR Connections podcast is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub as we are doing our 2026 NHL Trade Deadline report cards. Now, this is going to be a part 2 to this series as we are doing the Eastern Conference side. Part 1 was the Western Conference. I will leave a link down below if you want to watch the Western Conference, just very similar to how I left a link to the Eastern Conference down below on the Western Conference side. So getting into the 2026 NHL Trade Deadline report cards, very similar to how we did on the part 1. We are going to go with division first. So we are going to go division by division on the Eastern Conference. And we are also going to go in order of the standings as it is currently stands. So to start this out, let's go over to Raleigh and let's talk about those Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes have arguably one of the strongest rosters in the NHL. In terms of durability, this has been a team that has really been functioning at a high level this entire season. So it really isn't that shocking. The Carolina Hurricanes only made one move here, and it was really to add some more stability to that bottom six by getting a physical and a gritty forward in Nick DeSalers from the Philadelphia Flyers, and they only had to give up a 7th round pick in order to get him. Now, I get a B here just because in order to achieve what Carolina is trying to do, Nick DeSalers does solve that. He does add, once again, some physical traits to that bottom six, and that's something that Carolina would like to need come playoff time. They weren't going to make any splashy moves. They weren't going to go trade for a star or try to, overpay for a big name. So based off of what Carolina needed at the trade deadline, this gets a B for Carolina. Now, similar to what we did in part 1, I do not factor in trades that happen in December, January, or February. I only look at the trade deadline week itself. So putting that into consideration, Pittsburgh Penguins making a small move here, getting Elmer Soderblom from the Detroit Red Wings. Yeah, they give up a 3rd round pick in this year's draft in order to get it. And considering Soderblom and what maybe potential that he has and what he can bring to the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, this is a C+. I know there was a lot of people who are wondering maybe Pittsburgh would try to go out and get some bigger name or try to go out and get somebody for a top 6 role, or maybe, try to get some more defensive help for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But overall, considering what Pittsburgh did and the roster that they have, yes, Evgeny Malkin getting suspended for 5 games, that is not fun. And also the fact that Sidney Crosby is still out, but he will be returning soon with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Is only going to be a couple of weeks away. So with the Pittsburgh Penguins, considering what they did at the trade deadline, it's a C+. It is nothing that you are going to look back at a few years later and say, wow. But Soderblom, it's not a bad pickup. So for Pittsburgh, a C+ here. This one could be a little bit controversial here, but overall, the New York Islanders, a C+, getting the captain for the St. Louis Blues in Braden Shen. Now, they did have to give up, a 1st round pick this year, 3rd round pick this year, a, good veteran forward in Jonathan Drouin. Now, giving up a 20-year-old goalie that has a chance to bite you at the end, and that's one of the reasons why I think this could go down a little bit lower. But overall, with the New York Islanders having a C+, with the Islanders move, Braden Shen, it does good for New York, but I don't see how this is going to get them above the Penguins or the Hurricanes in the division. And we also have to take into account the New York Islanders. They're going to be good enough to be a playoff team, but Braden Shen does not make them a Stanley Cup contender. So C+ for the New York Islanders is not bad, but I do kind of wonder giving up a 20-year-old goalie prospect on top of a first-round pick as well. We'll see how that goes in the future long-term for the New York Islanders. Connor Garland is not a bad player. As a matter of fact, Connor Garland does bring some usefulness to an organization. I can understand why somebody would want to get Connor Garland. However, it being the Columbus Blue Jackets is a bit puzzling. This is a Columbus Blue Jackets team that, yes, is still fighting for a playoff spot. They're still in that window where they could go and be a wild card team in the Eastern Conference. But with considering what Columbus has done this year, there is a lot of question marks surrounding this team moving forward. More importantly, I see the Columbus Blue Jackets as an organization that giving up a second and a third for Connor Garland, it is not something that I look at as going to be a good move long-term compared to short-term. So seeing the Columbus Blue Jackets, I give it a C. I understand why you did it, but Connor Garland, you get him from Vancouver, who is just freaking selling off a lot of assets at the trade deadline. But you only, you gave up a second, you gave up a third for Connor Garland. We'll have to see how that goes long-term. But yeah, short-term, this could maybe be a good move, but I just don't see a long-term picture here. So Columbus Blue Jackets, they get a C. For a team that was selling off assets, really shocked they didn't get more in return. The Washington Capitals getting a C-. They trade away Nick Dowd, longtime veteran center, to the Vegas Golden Knights. In return, you got a goalie prospect in Jesper Beckman, and then you also get 2 more picks on top of that. Then you trade John Carlson to Anaheim. You do get a first-round pick, which is a good part, and there's the reason why I didn't give it a D or an F. You did get a first-round pick situation there. But what I do wonder with the Washington Capitals is you then go and you trade for Timothy Liljegren. Okay, a bit question there. You do get David Kampf. This is somebody that, has been a bottom 6 guy, someone who you can be on the roster, something like that. But overall, I don't really understand Washington as a whole when it comes to what they were trying to do here. I mean, short term, this is going to be a situation where you're clearly rebuilding or you're starting a rebuild. But I wonder, you move John Carlson, you move Nick Dowd, but what's the plan to replace them? Are there guys in the minors you're going to call up? Are there players that are going to be veterans from the AHL, from Hershey, that are going to take that role and pretty much replace what Dowd and what Carlson does? Also, they're selling off these assets and trading away these veterans, but they're only about 5 points out from a playoff spot. So it's not like they were immediately dead and there's no way that they can be a wild card team. They're only a few points back from being a wild card team out there in Washington. I mean, with the Columbus Blue Jackets, like I alluded to before, I mean, this is a team that was only 1 point out. I could see why Columbus would try to make an attempt to add a middle 6 forward like Connor Garland. But the Washington Capitals, this is a team that was only 5 points out, and instead you trade John Carlson and you trade Nick Dowd. So yes, C- for the Washington Capitals. It's not that it was bad trades. It was not awful. But considering what they were trying to do here, I don't see the rationale behind it. For a Philadelphia Flyers team that was supposed to be selling off assets, and really a Philadelphia Flyers team that despite being 6 points away from being at that final wild card spot, I mean, they really did not sell off as much as I thought they were going to be. I mean, this is a Philadelphia Flyers team that realistically should have done more at the trade deadline, but you didn't. I mean, you're supposed to be rebuilding. That's what a lot of people are talking about. So you're going to be selling off veteran contracts, right? Okay, let's trade a former top prospect to Bobby Brink, send him to Minnesota, essentially swapping for a 24-year-old defenseman over in Minnesota. I don't really understand what Philadelphia is trying to do here. You trade Nick DeSalairs to Carolina, okay, but you only got a seventh for it. Good for Carolina, but I don't understand the vision here in Philadelphia. I mean, this is an organization that has so many problems out there in Philly. It just seems like a rebuild has been happening for the last 7 years, and there hasn't been much progress outside of one or two players out there in Philly. So, I mean, this is going to be a Flyers organization that they're working on a project. They're trying to make it work, but it just hasn't worked for the Philadelphia Flyers. So D+ here. I don't give it an F because at least they, tried to do something, but a D+ for the Philadelphia Flyers just because this was a very disappointing trade deadline. They could have given up more. They could have traded away more assets and maybe gotten some more back, but the Philadelphia Flyers did not achieve that. Hey, New Jersey, what are you trying to do here? Like, I'm being so serious. New Jersey Devils, what are you trying to do here? This is a New Jersey Devils team that had some veteran players they could have shipped out. They didn't. There were some New Jersey Devils. They have some assets. Maybe they could try to move it around. They did not. I mean, this was a team that could have traded Dougie Hamilton. They kept him. Dawson Mercer. They kept him. I don't really see what the long-term plan is for New Jersey. You're not a wild card team. You're not even close at this point. I mean, shoot, you're almost 10 points back from a wild card spot in this season at the trade deadline. So the New Jersey Devils decide, we're going to get Nick Bjugstad, and that's going to be a good fix for the New Jersey Devils. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And more importantly, they didn't get rid of any real bad contracts or anything of note. I mean, Andre Palat was back in January, but once again, I don't count those on this video. I just talk about the trade deadline week itself. So the New Jersey Devils getting a D is because this is how very mediocre their trade deadline was, making one smaller move. It's not something that I would sit here and say is great for New Jersey. They could have done way much more, and they didn't. So, yeah, D for New Jersey. I'm not counting Artemi Panarin here. I'm not counting the trade they did with Artemi Panarin. Considering that, this is an F. New York Rangers, what did you do here besides nothing? You are one of the worst teams in the NHL. You are by far one of the most disappointing seasons we have seen in the most recent era of New York. You have pending free agents coming up. You really didn't trade any of them away. You have some guys with some big contracts you could have offloaded. You didn't. All the New York Rangers did at the trade deadline, really the only moves of substance and even note that the New York Rangers even did was trade Sam Carrick to the Buffalo Sabres, and you only got a third and a sixth for the guy. Now, I understand Sam Carrick before this trade deadline, I wouldn't have said a second-round pick, but hey, considering who was being traded for a second-round pick, I'm shocked they didn't at least try to make a Hail Mary attempt and try to get a team to give them a second-round pick, considering the certain talent at the trade deadline this year that received second-round picks. This is also the same team that made, a minor AHL for AHL swap with the Chicago Blackhawks. Yippee. So the New York Rangers at the trade deadline, you really didn't do anything of substance. You did nothing of note. You didn't trade away pending free agents. You mostly just sat on your hands and did nothing. Chris Drury, if you get fired at the end of the year, I don't think most people are going to be shocked by that. So the New York Rangers get an F for the trade deadline because you were by far a fail at the 2026 trade deadline. Let's move on. He is back. My, oh my, he is back with Tampa Bay. Corey Perry were reacquired once again from the LA Kings, giving up a second-round pick, which would be considered a little bit steep, but considering the trade market this year, Corey Perry for a second-round pick is not a big deal when you remember that Michael McCarron also got a second-round pick in return. So this is going to be a B- here. Tampa Bay getting the guy who has lost in the Stanley Cup final year after year after year after year after year. Veteran leadership, bringing that stability to the locker room unless he was in Chicago for some reason. But when it comes to Corey Perry, this is somebody that's going to be good for a playoff push. This is Tampa Bay, who has the second best record in the Eastern Conference. Them and Carolina have been the two best teams all year long in the Eastern Conference. And it's also a team battling right now with the Buffalo Sabres for the first in the Atlantic. So, very similar to the Metro with Carolina. I talked about how Carolina got a B because they addressed the roster and really only fixed something that was needed for the team, but it would not be flashy. Well, this is very similar. Corey Perry, if this was 10 years ago, would have been a superstar name. But now, with Corey Perry, he is a veteran depth piece for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and there is nothing wrong with that. So Tampa Bay getting a B-, bringing back Corey Perry, that was a solid job here by Tampa. If you were wanting quantity over quality, Buffalo would probably have a B+. If you were looking at just fixing your bottom six and not leaving anything else alone, you would probably get a B. But what I don't understand about the Buffalo Sabres here is, okay, you call up the Winnipeg Jets, you get Logan Stanley, Luke Schenn, and former Golden Knight Tanner Pearson in a trade with Winnipeg. There was two separate deals, but essentially, you give up Bryson, you give up Rosen, your former first-round pick, and then you give up two picks as well in order to get Stanley and Schenn. Then you trade for Sam Carrick. I just already talked about the New York Rangers. I mean, a third and a sixth is not terrible value for a guy like Sam Carrick. But the issue I have with Buffalo is that this is the first time in 15 years that you are relevant come playoff time. And this is the moves that you make. Nothing flashy, nothing of real big substance. Essentially, the Buffalo Sabres organization getting these bottom six forwards, getting, a second defensive pairing, third defensive pairing type of guy in Luke Schenn. I see this as short-term rentals. They're going to help the Buffalo Sabres get to possibly the second round of the playoffs. Not that Buffalo would be complaining about that at all. They will happily take it. But when it comes to Buffalo and this organization, I give it a C+ because these are moves that are not going to be overly impressive, but it does the job. It does strengthen their bottom six, and it does address certain needs here. So C+ for Buffalo. Trade deadline, they're just happy to be in playoff contention, and they're only about a point back from Tampa Bay in that division battle.
PR Connections Radio presents This episode of the PR Connections podcast is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
Okay, with the Detroit Red Wings organization, I do appreciate the person in the back hitting that button. But when it comes to Detroit, C+, David Perron, bringing him back to the Red Wings organization, a good veteran guy to have on your middle six. And then you also get a little bit older and you acquire a good defenseman who has been a veteran on that pairing with Justin Falk from St. Louis. Now, in terms of what Detroit's trying to do here, I give it a C+. These are not any long-term moves that you are going to look at 5 or 10 years down the road and say, oh, these are the moves to help Detroit end up, having a long-term stability. But from a short-term perspective, if David Perron and Justin Falk can help the Detroit Red Wings make it to, let's say, the second round, you're going to take that. If the Detroit Red Wings can make it past Tampa Bay and past Detroit and Detroit and get past Buffalo and get past Tampa Bay, this is a Detroit Red Wings team that if you make it to the Eastern Conference Final, then what you traded for David Perron and what you traded for Justin Falk will end up being worth it at the end. So overall, this was not a bad trade deadline for Detroit. I would say a C+. It achieves what they are needing to do in terms of short-term stability out there in Detroit. So C+ out there. For an organization that really is not doing anything at the moment, you did nothing at the trade deadline. So I'm going to keep this very short and sweet. The Montreal Canadiens made no moves at all at the trade deadline and therefore get a C because they really didn't need to do anything at the trade deadline. There was really no big name or any big contracts or assets that Montreal could have offloaded. And more importantly, the Montreal Canadiens, you're seeing your organization for what it is. Right now, the Montreal Canadiens have the first wild card spot. You still have that talent in Suzuki, in Caulfield, and all of the talent that Montreal has with Lane Hudson. So this is a Montreal Canadiens team that stayed put at the trade deadline mostly because they didn't need to make a big move at the trade deadline. They're going to be a wild card team. We all know this. So for Montreal, they get a C because they stayed put and they did what they needed to do at the trade deadline, and that was not make any big moves and just keep the roster the way it is. For a Boston Bruins team that is the second wild card as of this recording, they did all of that rebuilding and selling off assets at 2025 NHL Trade Deadline. So this year, the Boston Bruins, they made a small 4-player trade, kind of a swap in terms of AHL players and prospects. And then they also traded, a low round draft pick to Vancouver when they were selling off former Blackhawk Lucas Reichel. But the Boston Bruins, this was just a trade deadline that you weren't going to be selling off any more big names. You weren't going to go out and acquire any big names, and you still have that second wild card spot you are contending with at this moment. So based off of what the Boston Bruins had at their disposal and what they weren't going to give up at their inventory, this is a C for Boston. This is just a average trade deadline. It's going to come and go, and you're probably not going to talk about the Boston Bruins 2026 trade deadline a few years down the road. The C- isn't because they acquired Warren Foegele. In fact, I think Warren Foegele is actually a really solid player, and if you are only about 5 points out from the final wild card spot, I understand the rationale there. What doesn't make a lot of sense is that you traded for Warren Foegele, but not only did you give up a second-round pick and a conditional third-round pick, but you also got back a conditional third-round pick. So if you're really looking at it from a subjective perspective, you traded a second-round pick for Warren Foegele, and then you swapped third-round picks with the Los Angeles Kings. That's essentially what that trade was. So giving up a second-round pick for Warren Foegele, if you make the playoffs, this grade would definitely change to probably about a B-, C+ category. But if you miss the playoffs, trading a second-round pick for Warren Foegele, I don't see that, being a good situation long-term. Like I alluded to with the Detroit Red Wings, you trade away David Perron, you get back a conditional fourth-round pick. That's okay. Really nothing wrong there. But overall, with the Ottawa Senators, this is just an organization where you're a few points out from a wild card spot. You call up the LA Kings, you get Warren Foegele, But overall, this is just you give up a second and a conditional third for Warner Fogle. You get back a conditional third from LA. This is just something that I think is not going to look great long term. Short term, if you make the playoffs, it's going to be fine. But long term, I just don't see the vision here out there in Ottawa. This D plus isn't about the fact that they claimed Cole Reinhardt from the Vegas Golden Knights. This D plus isn't the fact that they traded a veteran defenseman in Jeff Petrie to Minnesota for essentially a 7th round pick that is just going to be a draft pick that's going to be in their arsenal. No, the reason why the Florida Panthers get a D plus is, let me get this straight. You are officially, and I put this on record, officially 8 points back from a wild card spot. You are the reigning, defending, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, but you didn't buy, which is okay, but you also didn't sell off assets too. You didn't trade away Sergei Bobrovsky, which a lot of people were hoping that you were. Sergei Bobrovsky was arguably the biggest name in the rumor mill and in the trade market what-if scenario. I mean, I saw so many people talking about, should the Vegas Golden Knights acquire Sergei Bobrovsky? So this D plus isn't really about the Florida Panthers and what they acquired. This D plus is about the fact that Florida is not a Stanley Cup contender this year. We all know it. And they didn't trade away any of their, potential free agents next offseason. They really didn't do much in terms of actually making their team better for the long-term future. They're keeping the team mostly intact, and they're hoping that next year they can just rebound and get back to a Stanley Cup run. I don't see how well this is going to go for Florida, but overall a D plus for the Florida Panthers. This is just a trade deadline where you could have done more and you didn't. So D plus. And I saved the best for last. The Toronto Maple Leafs, a fan base that is a disappointment to entire hockey fans. This is a Toronto Maple Leafs team that every time they do something terrible, we all laugh in unison because it's just so fun making fun of Toronto. But when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, yes, you trade away Nick Waugh for a first and a third. That is not what makes it a D. What makes it a D is that this is a Toronto Maple Leafs team where if you saw the fan base on Twitter, they were saying that Bobby McMahon was going to get a first-round pick back. Scott Lawton was going to get a first-round pick back. Oh, we're going to get so many first-round picks at the trade deadline. Oh, man, our guys are so valuable. All these teams are just going to bend over backwards to get all of our assets, right? All right, well, you got a conditional second and a fourth for Bobby McMahon. Oh, yeah, that's definitely a first-round pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Scott Lawton. Oh, he's going to be a first-round pick? Absolutely. You get a conditional third from the LA Kings. Way to go, Toronto. Way to go. Round of applause to Toronto Maple Leafs. Oh, man, it was so fun laughing at you guys on social media. And overall, when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs, outside of trading Nick Waugh for a conditional first-round pick, you really did nothing at all to actually move the needle. And for Toronto, looking forward to your rebuild. I got to say that. Toronto Maple Leafs fans, the ones that are upset that Mitch Marner is now in Vegas. Well, if you think about it, you essentially traded Mitch Marner for a conditional first and a conditional fifth. All right, that trade tree is going to look really good. Ain't that right, Steve Dangle? Hi, how are you? Now, when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs itself, this is going to be a trade deadline where you didn't do enough. And by the way, Toronto fans who are saying, oh, we need to trade Austin Matthews because he was the captain of Team USA. Hey, we won the gold medal game, buddy. How you doing? But when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs, this was just a trade deadline where I sat back, put my legs up, and just laughed at you guys because you thought you were going to get multiple first-round picks, and you did not. D for Toronto. There you go. So this was the 2026 NHL Trade Deadline report cards. And tell us how you feel in the comment section. Unless you're a Maple Leafs fan, you're probably going to hate me. But when it comes to the Vegas Hockey Hub 2026 NHL Trade Deadline report cards, Let us know how we did in the comment section down below. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. Have a good one, and go Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.